Today on Radio Boat Anchor, I'm going to restore this vintage 1961 Heathkit FM-4 FM tuner that I recently purchased on Shop Goodwill online. Specifications. The Heathkit FM-4 was an entry-level vintage 5-tube mono FM tuner from the late 1950s, early 1960s, designed for high-fidelity monophonic reception. Like most Heathkits of this era, it had a distinctive Tweedy cover, a 5-tube lineup, and a pre-assembled FM front end. A European variant, the FM-4U, featured a multi-tap transformer for different line voltages. The FM-4 could be purchased as a kit or fully assembled from the factory. Other features included a slide rule dial, flywheel tuning, and AFC or automatic frequency control to prevent station drift. On the back of the FM-4's chassis, there was an RCA jack connection for binaural audio, an RCA jack connection to an external multiplexer such as the Heathkit AC-11 multiplexer adapter for stereo output, and a twin-lead 300 ohm FM external antenna connections. My FM-4 was missing the brushed gold aluminum trim piece at the bottom of the faceplate as seen in this picture. Once my FM-4 has been restored, I plan on connecting its external multiplexer output via RCA audio cable to my Heathkit AC-11 multiplexer adapter. The output of my Heathkit AC-11 multiplexer adapter will connect via RCA audio cables to the left and right inputs of my ICO ST70 stereo amplifier. Both my Heathkit AC-11 multiplexer adapter and ICO ST70 stereo amplifier still need to be restored. Unboxing. My Heathkit FM-4 FM tuner was won on a Shop Goodwill online auction for $30 plus $11.90 shipping and handling plus $3.05 in tax. 2 weeks later, I received my prize. Disassembly. My Heathkit FM-4 FM tuner came with some extra nuts and a lock washer. I'll need to figure out where these are supposed to be installed. The first step was to remove the cabinet. It was held in place with 4 self-tapping screws on the bottom. I also secured the cord with a twist tie to keep it out of the way and hopefully prevent it from getting damaged during the restore process. There is a thick washer under each corner of the cabinet. These need to be included during cabinet installation. I was never a fan of these Heathkit 261-13 plastic feet. They get brittle with age, crack, and break. If one or more is broken, I typically replace them with standard rubberized feet. I have also tried 3D printed Heathkit 261-13 plastic feet, but found that they are not as strong as the originals. The Heathkit 261-13 plastic feet on this tuner were in good shape, so I left them alone. The bottom cover is secured to the chassis with 4 self-tapping screws on the bottom, and 2 on the back. The top and underside of the chassis were exposed for servicing. I was only able to find a schematic for the Heathkit FM-4 tuner online, and not the complete assembly manual. It should fit my needs during this restoration. As mentioned in the specifications section, this tuner has a 5-tube lineup with the location circled in red. I decided to remove the electron tubes so as not to damage them during the restore process. The first step was to remove the twist-on metal shields. The electron tubes were removed by pulling them straight up. This picture would be important as it shows the replacement location. The electron tube used in the pre-assembled FM front end was a little different. I had to push the metal shroud towards it, then pull the electron tube away from the tuner in order to remove. The pilot lamp was removed at this time by pushing in and turning it counterclockwise. It was removed for both cleaning and a continuity check to make sure the pilot lamp was good. Electrolytic capacitor replacement. Electrolytic capacitors have a finite lifetime. As they age, the electrolyte dries up, causing their capacitance to fall in value. This is most evident in power supply filter capacitors. You will hear AC hum from the speaker of the equipment as the filter capacitor's capacitance drops in value. Replacement electrolytic capacitors must meet the capacitance and meet or exceed the working voltage of the capacitors they are replacing. In addition, electrolytic capacitors are polarized and must be replaced with the right polarity in the circuit. On modern electrolytic capacitors, there should be a designation indicating the negative lead. The first to be replaced are these two 40 microfarad 150 volt electrolytic capacitors under the chassis. I check all replacement capacitors before installation using my Mega 328 graphic component tester. They were replaced with the more standard valued 47 microfarad 250 volt electrolytic capacitors. On the top side of the chassis there was a 100 microfarad 200 volt electrolytic capacitor. The positive lead of this electrolytic capacitor was connected to this terminal, while the negative connected to the metal chassis. Given that the modern electrolytic capacitor replacement was much smaller, I decided to relocate it under the chassis. The first step was to drill a hole for the ground connection terminal. Periodically, when installing new components on the underside of the chassis, I would pull out my metal ruler to make sure said components would properly fit under the bottom cover. The replacement 100 microfarad 250 volt electrolytic capacitor was soldered in place. All replacement electrolytic capacitors installed so far were secured to the chassis using E6000 clear adhesive. The adhesive application was a little sloppy as I only had a tube with a wide applicator. Here was another electrolytic capacitor replaced. I determined that I could solder the replacement 22 microfarad 160 volt electrolytic capacitor to these terminals instead. This electrolytic capacitor was also held to the chassis using E6000 adhesive. I decided to replace this plastic case 0.05 microfarad 200 volt capacitor with a 0.047 microfarad 1000 volt metallized polypropylene film capacitor I had in stock. This 10 microfarad 25 volt electrolytic capacitor was replaced with a 10 microfarad 50 volt electrolytic capacitor. I was able to relocate the replacement to under the chassis as it was much smaller in physical size. Chassis cleaning and lubrication. I cleaned the top of the chassis using my go-to cleaner, Windex. Hard to reach places were cleaned using a Q-tip moistened with Windex. The underside of the chassis was cleaned with Windex as well. Again using Q-tips to get into hard to reach areas. I was able to remove the surface corrosion from many of the nuts using just a Q-tip moistened in Windex. The front knobs were removed for cleaning, they just pulled off. Q-tips moistened in Windex were used to clean the shafts of the tuning and volume knobs. In addition, I used a Q-tip to clean around the nut that held the volume control to the front panel. A previous owner put lines on the front dial using a marker. These marker lines were easily removed using a little denatured alcohol. Deoxit D5 was used to clean the wiper and carbon resistive element in the volume control. The contacts of the AFC control switch, the wiper and carbon resistive element of the AFC control potentiometer, the contacts of the RCA audio jack, and the contacts of the multiplex or mux jack. Labelle 107 plastic-friendly metal train oil was used to lubricate the shaft of the volume control, the tuning control shaft, and the shafts of the dial cord pulleys. In addition, the tuning air capacitor's bearing. I noticed that the flywheel on the tuning shaft was loose. I tightened it to the shaft using the set screw. The knobs were cleaned with an old toothbrush and water. While the AC cord was cleaned using a magic eraser, I made sure I rinsed off the bleach residue from the magic eraser. Armor was used to bring back the luster of the AC power cord's vinyl cladding. The AC cord was then tightly wound up and secured with a twist tie again. The gold paint had worn off of the Heathkit logo. I used an ultrafine paintbrush to repaint the Heathkit logo using Tester's gold enamel paint. The front panel and knobs were treated to a coat of Armor to bring back the luster in the paint and the bakelite knobs. The knobs were then reinstalled. The one with the white dot is the volume control knob. Tube cleaning, testing, and installation. The markings on the sides of the electron tubes could be easily wiped away when cleaning. As such, I only cleaned the tips of the electron tubes with Windex. Each electron tube was tested using my trusty ICO 635 tube tester. I have had many tube testers through the years and found this one the easiest to use. Each electron tube was installed into the correct socket. The pilot lamp was installed as well, which you push in then turn clockwise in its socket. I used 800 grit sandpaper to clean up the corrosion on the twist-on metal shields. I sanded them in a helical pattern to give them a great-looking brushed metal texture. The twist-on metal shields were installed. They push on, then are held in place with a clockwise twist. Labels were added to identify the audio and mux or multiplex outputs. I almost forgot to extend the tube metal shield attached to the pre-assembled FM front end. Testing. Time to perform initial testing. I used my home-built high-impedance audio amplifier based on the LM386 low-power audio amplifier integrated circuit to amplify the output of my Heathkit FM-4 FM tuner. I first connected my audio amplifier to the mux or multiplex output of the tuner. The Heathkit FM-4 FM tuner requires a twin-lead antenna for good reception. Both the audio and mux outputs were tested on my Heathkit FM-4 FM tuner. Even with a good twin-lead antenna, I felt that the reception and audio output were weak. I noticed that the electron tube used in the pre-assembled FM front end was a 6GY8, which is not a direct replacement for the specified 6DT8 in the schematic. I purchased a 6DT8 electron tube from a seller on eBay, tested it using my trusty ICO 635 tube tester, then installed the 6DT8 into the pre-assembled FM front end. With the 6DT8 electron tube installed, my Heathkit FM-4 didn't pick up any stations, only AC hum. The Heathkit FM-4 schematic I found online specified that the 6DT8 dual triode electron tube was installed in the pre-assembled FM front end. With the original 6GY8 electron tube installed, I was once again receiving local FM stations, although very weak. At some point, I believe that the pre-assembled FM front end must have changed, requiring the 6GY8 triple triode electron tube instead. Alignment. Radio alignment is a process of adjusting the tuned circuits and variable capacitors or inductors in a receiver to maximize its sensitivity and selectivity. This ensures the radio receives weak signals clearly, isolates specific stations properly, and displays the correct frequency on the dial. Unfortunately, I was only able to find the schematic for the Heathkit FM-4 FM tuner online, and not the assembly manual, which would have the alignment process. Even if the assembly manual was available, I would be hesitant to perform the alignment process given the age of the trimmers and the coil slugs in this radio. I would leave the alignment alone if the radio had reasonably good reception. Final assembly. For some reason, the previous owner taped a small piece of twin lead to the top of the cabinet as if it was precious. The cabinet's exterior was thoroughly cleaned with my go-to cleaner, Windex. Then it was treated to a coat of Armor All to bring back the cabinet's luster. The bottom cover was also cleaned with Windex on both sides. Q-tips moistened with Windex were used to clean each screw head that held the plastic feet in place. All remaining hardware was cleaned with Windex. My FM-4's chassis was turned upside down. Then the bottom cover was installed with 4 self-tapping metal screws, and 2 more on the back. Finally, the cabinet was reinstalled. Thick washers were installed between the bottom cover and the cabinet's mounting tabs. 4 self-tapping screws secured the cabinet to the chassis. Unfortunately, the cabinet obscured part of the audio label I applied earlier. Enough of the label is visible to serve its purpose. Conclusion. I never did figure out where this extra hardware was from. There is no nuts or lock washers missing from my Heathkit FM-4 FM tuner. Instead, it went into my hardware drawer in case this hardware was needed for future projects. Here is a picture of all the capacitors replaced in my Heathkit FM-4 FM tuner. For final testing, I connected my FM tuner to my external G5RV external dipole shortwave antenna.
I went through and I saw some people tweet this out. We have 8 weeks of the 18. We're in that.
FM reception was pretty good with my external antenna attached. I can't wait to connect my 1961 Heathkit FM-4 FM tuner to my Heathkit AC-11 multiplexer adapter and ICO ST70 stereo amplifier once they are restored. Please like this post and subscribe to Radio Boat Anchor so that you're alerted to my future posts. Thank you.